Hello, I'm Barbara. Today is the 8th of November 2020 and this is episode 5 of the diary of my recovery from binge eating disorder. Before I get into it, I've got a brief update in terms of my eating. Absolutely fine this past week, no binges, not even really any strong temptation to binge. There have of course been the usual thoughts about, was that a bit too much? I'm a bit nervous about eating this, but no, it's been okay. And I was particularly pleased yesterday evening. We'd had sort of a fairly normal day's eating. I'd had porridge for breakfast, had a coronation chicken sandwich for lunch, followed by some yoghurt and then half a chocolate brownie, which we'd bought the previous day and only eaten half because it was too big. And then the evening meal was spaghetti bolognese, which I'd cooked from scratch, and an oat and apple crumble and custard. And perhaps two and a half hours after we'd eaten the evening meal, I was working on my jigsaw, which is in the dining room, and you have to go through the dining room to get to the kitchen. And my husband came through and went into the kitchen and went and got a bag of crisps, a big family bag of crisps out of the cupboard, and took it back into the lounge to eat some of, at least. And I can remember thinking, asking my stomach what I felt about that, and my stomach basically telling me that, well, I'm quite satisfied, I don't need anything to eat now. But also thinking that if I did have something, I wouldn't have gone for crisps, I would have gone for the ginger nuts, which were in a packet in the lounge. We'd had some over previous days. And then later on he told me he was going upstairs for a bath, and I took my cup of tea and went into the lounge to put my favourite programme that he doesn't like on the telly. And I thought, oh, I'll have those ginger nuts now. So I got the packet and I took two, and I ate them along with my tea. I like to dunk them. And then I watched my programme, and it didn't even occur to me to go back to the packet for more. So that is not a normal set of circumstances, shall I just say that. So it's lovely that that's happening, and hopefully that is happening more and more often, and the kind of battle, the fight with food is happening less and less often. So a couple of things I want to share today. One is about where did it all go wrong. So to put this in context, I've probably started binge eating while I was still in primary school, even in infant school, and I would have met the criteria for binge eating disorder from some time in my early to mid-teens. Now, when I was in my early 30s, I had a moment of realisation that, I'd been on a diet, lost loads of weight, put it all back on again, and I had this kind of epiphany moment of realising that my weight wasn't the problem, my eating was the problem. And I had a period then of exploring different ways of doing something different that wasn't dieting. I went to Overeaters Anonymous for a while, and that was the first time that I met other people who had a similar compulsion around food as I did. I tried fat acceptance. Well, they call it body positivity now, but at the time, fat acceptance. And I read magazines about big, beautiful women and wasn't convinced. And I read various non-diet books about how you could, if you just allowed yourself to have whatever you wanted, then eventually you would kind of get it out of your system, and you then would eat normally. And it didn't really work for me. But I did, as part of this reading and researching, and this was before the internet was really a big thing, I heard, I found the book Overcoming Binge Eating. I read about binge eating disorder and realised that I had it. So I went to my GP and asked for help, and I got referred to a psychologist. And for a short period of time, the psychologist was helping me to do the self-help programme in Overcoming Binge Eating. And yes, I stopped binging for the most part, but actually I was still restricting. Actually, I was still thinking about my weight all the time. And then I had to change job and move house, so moved to a different GP. And in the context of the new job, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I can remember sitting there in the nurse's office at the GP practice, and she was, she was looking at my blood test and saying, yes, you've got diabetes. So you're going to need to be careful about what you eat. You're going to need to cut down on sugar and fat. She gave me a leaflet, so this is 1998, gave me a leaflet that said I should eat a low-fat diet and base all my meals on starchy carbohydrates, and that if I was, for instance, on a plane and they gave me the diabetic meal and it didn't have enough starch in it, I should ask for some bread, some extra bread. But all the way through, the emphasis was that I needed to lose weight, and of course I tried to do that many times in lots of different ways. Now I don't know actually whether the fact that I have binge eating disorder is recorded on my medical records. I certainly remember talking to the GP about it at the time that I was a binge eater, that it was a problem for me. I have referred to it several times over the years, because I see either a practice nurse or a GP at least once a year to monitor my diabetes. So usually it goes something like, oh well, your HbA1c is up, or you've gained some weight, and do you know why that is? And I'll say, well yes, it's because I'm a binge eater. And they've never said, tell me more about that. They've never said there's something we can do to help you with that. It's just been, you need to increase your activity, decrease your food so you can lose some weight. So next time I do go to the GP, which will probably be probably next year, I'm due for a review. I intend to find out whether it's actually recorded on my records that I have BED, because it should be. But anyway, because of this approach that it was, I had to control my eating and I had to lose weight, I kind of, not exactly forgot, but just stopped paying attention to the fact that I had an eating disorder. The diabetes seemed to be the more important thing, and I wasn't being offered any help or encouragement to deal with my binge eating. So I kind of just let it go, and that means that even though I would say I'm not on a diet, I'm doing a lifestyle change, or I'm eating healthily, I was on the diet and I was trying to lose weight. And that's how it continued. Now, the largest ever weight loss I've ever had in my life was between 2012 and 2013. I lost over 7 stone, and even at the bottom end of that I was still technically obese, but that's by the by. I did it's like a lot of things. I started out by, I'll just cut back a bit, I'll stop buying all the snack foods. And then kind of a few weeks in, I found a sort of audio recording online based on cognitive hypnotherapy. I think of it as hypnosis, although they say it isn't. I don't really understand what the difference is. But anyway, it involves suggestion. So it's a 10-minute recording that you listen to every night, and it says things like, imagining your new slim body and how your brain and body are going to work together so that you can lose weight at the fastest, safest weight for your body, and you'll realise how quickly you get full and how much less your appetite is, and all this kind of thing. And it really worked. And my appetite, I'd always been hungrier than most people. That's my impression. It really worked, and my appetite just went kind of really reduced. And it would be things like I would be walking around the supermarket and I'd go past the chocolate aisle and I would just kind of look at them, and they didn't draw me, they didn't attract me. So that made it seem, it was like a dream, really. And this continued for over a year. And I lost all that weight and I felt fantastic, and I was convinced that I was going to be a normal eater from then on. But what happened next was that I signed up for a personal training program delivered online, so some very intense exercise schedules. That was fine. I was quite happy with that. But the person delivering it also wanted me to weigh myself, which I refused, but also to keep a food diary. And I did do that initially. I kept a food diary and sent it to her, which is what she wanted me to do. And then she made some comments. She made some helpful comments about how I could adjust what I was eating in order to improve my body composition, which is code for lose fat. And I basically just went haywire. And, I started having more and more of the things that I shouldn't be having. And gradually, the weight loss slowed down. It did continue for a while, but it slowed right down. And eventually, I completely lost it. And all the weight started coming back on because I was binging again. And what I think was going on there was that demand to be accountable for what I was eating and then being told to adjust what I was eating was just really triggering the patterns from childhood and from adolescence, when my parents were trying to control what I ate in order that I could lose weight. I've mentioned the book Intuitive Eating a couple of times. I've finished it and I've gone back to the beginning and started reading again. And in one of the early chapters there's a bit that talks about parental control of eating, and that people who grow up with their parents monitoring and controlling their food intake when they're children or adolescents have much higher incidence of eating disorders, disordered eating in general, specific eating disorders, and also have a higher BMI. So that when parents try to control their children's eating, it backfires and it does exactly the opposite of what the intention is. So again, I don't blame my parents for that. They didn't know this and they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were protecting me and helping me to be healthier, but it backfired. And then many years later, 40, 50 years later, this person who I was paying money to help me to become fitter and healthier asked me to do something which triggered all those memories, and I completely lost it. So both of those, the diagnosis of diabetes and also this fitness person, they were missed opportunities. And it took until, that was 2013, 14. It's taken until this year for me to fully realise again that binge eating disorder is an eating disorder which needs to be treated seriously. And you don't treat it with a diet, you don't treat it with weight prejudice, you don't treat it with healthy eating. There is a problem with, lots of people with eating disorders. I've mentioned this before, black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking. One of the ways that manifests itself is orthorexia, the compulsion to eat right. So, if I was very happily eating porridge for breakfast and this fitness person came along and told me, oh, try a lower carb breakfast, try eggs or whatever, I would then feel compelled to eat eggs. Now, I like eggs, but I also like porridge. And I should be able to choose, shouldn't I? I'm not a professional athlete. I don't need to have every little detail down to the last, down to the ultimate to get a fraction of a second off my 100 metres time or anything of that sort. I'm just an average person trying to be healthy. So for me, any kind of food monitoring, food recording, food diaries, weight monitoring, shape monitoring has the potential to be problematic. The weighing scales are still hidden away in the cupboard and there they will stay. I was out walking yesterday, and one of the great things about walking is that you can think at the same time. And I was thinking about the notion I currently have that the next time I weigh, if at all, will be on the 1st of January, which will be 3 months since I last weighed. Now, the last time I weighed, I was X stone 4, and I was thinking about what would I be then after 3 months, and I hoped I would be under X minus 1 stone. I thought it more likely I would be between X minus 1 and X minus 1.5. And if I was over X minus 1.5, so if I'd lost less than £10, I would be really unhappy and devastated. So, you know, even from this distance, even the theoretical possibility that I might not have lost enough weight is upsetting. It's distressing. So isn't it better not to know? I do know, well, I think I haven't gained weight. I think it is going down. Surely the important thing is that I feel well. I have a sense of freedom around food that I haven't had in a long time. And how much more mental energy I've got to think about other things when I'm not obsessing about food and my weight all the time. Well, time has gone on, so that bit lasted longer than I intended, so I shall leave the second topic for now. That can be, if it's still on my mind, it'll be what to talk about next time. So that's it for me. I hope you're well, and I hope that if you have binge eating problems, then maybe you'll recognise some of the things I'm talking about, and you'll find a better way to deal with it. Bye for now.